Hey, what is going on, Twintendo Nation? Today I've got another Pokemon Sun and Moon video for you guys. Now this one's actually a little bit different to what I normally do. This is actually a response video to my last one. So in the last video I made top 10 new features I personally wanted to see in Sun and Moon, and I went through the comment section and I picked 10 basically common features I saw that you guys would like to see in Pokemon Sun and Moon. So this is basically your list, guys. Now obviously there's going to be some things that not everyone agrees with, and that's fine. It'd be boring if we all had the same opinion, but just make sure that if you don't see something that you do want in this list, definitely let me know in the comment section below. And anyway, let's get started. So at number 10 we have balanced types. Now this is something I mentioned in my last video, which is additional type balance. So this was kind of fixed in X and Y with the introduction of the fairy type. However, there are certain types that don't have the same amount of decent battle ready Pokemon as others. For instance, poison Pokemon are really lacking in good Pokemon. I mean, sure, there are a few like Gengar and Amoonguss, but there really isn't enough. By having so little good poison types, it means your team can become really predictable if you're trying to counter common types such as Fairy, which are weak to poison. So there aren't even any poison pseudo-legendary Pokemon. And if you don't know what a pseudo-legendary is, it's basically Pokemon with really high stats but just aren't legendary Pokemon, which basically mean like Salamence, Garchomp, Metagross, Pokemon like that. And there aren't even any poison legendary Pokemon, which is kind of weird. Poison Pokemon have been around since Generation 1, 20 years on, no real strong poison Pokemon really. So I'd like to see certain types like poison get a big improvement for Pokemon Sun and Moon, and I think you guys do as well. I saw this quite a lot in the comment section. Like I said, this is your list. Anyway, moving on to number 9, this is Pokemon following you around. I'm pretty sure that like 99% of us enjoyed this feature in Heart Gold and Soul Silver. Although this is unlikely to happen again, since in X and Y Generation 6, they actually tried to scale Pokemon for once. So for example, if we remember Mamoswine, Rhyhorn, and there's also Abomasnow in Snowbell City. So it is going to be a bit more difficult to have Pokemon following you around again. If they were going to do it, it would probably have to be certain Pokemon at best. But you know, having said that, there are, 2 generations and 3, if we're going to include Sun and Moon, that haven't received the ability to have Pokemon walking outside of their Pokeball. So it would be a bit of a shame that some generations might miss out on this. So that's why I think a lot of fans want to see this feature return. Now moving on to number 8, we have gone for improved rivals. So something that popped up quite a bit in the comments is how disappointing rivals have been in the recent games, specifically Generation 5 and 6. In both of those games we've seen the introduction of multiple rivals, or friends in this case I guess is the best way to put it. In X and Y there wasn't really the main rival. I mean, sure, you could verse Callum or Serena depending on who you chose at the start of the game, whether you're a boy or girl, but they didn't feel like a rival personally. They felt more of a friend, and I think that's the best way to describe the past rivals we've had in the last couple of Pokemon games. And yeah, they've just been pretty disappointing. They didn't feel like a rival. Rivals in Red, Blue, Yellow, Gold and Silver were really good, felt really competitive and interesting, but recently they've been disappointing and forgettable. So hopefully in Sun and Moon we'll have a rival who has links to our character, certain reasons why they're our rival, and maybe this rival could compete with us to the very end of the game. That would be something really, really cool. Anyway, moving on to number 7, you guys have gone for a bigger incentive for completing the Pokedex. So if you're a Pokemon Pro, then chances are you've at least attempted to complete the National Dex before. With it increasing with each generation, which is currently at 721 Pokemon, it becomes increasingly difficult as a result. So in Black and White 2, the Shiny Charm was introduced for completing the National Dex, and at that time you only had to get 649 Pokemon. So why do we have to catch an extra 73 Pokemon to get the same item? I think it'd be really nice to have rewards for catching a certain amount of Pokemon. For example, every 100 Pokemon we caught, we'd get a reward, such as an item. Maybe it'd be something like a TM or maybe a Megastone, and then the more Pokemon we catch, the better rewards we would get. So, for example, a costume or clothing that we can wear in the game. And speaking of clothing, we're going to move on to the next feature you guys have chosen, which is gender-neutral clothing. Now, I saw this quite a lot in the comments, and one problem with the customization in X and Y was how your clothes were decided by gender. So like I said, I saw quite a few people complaining and how female players couldn't wear shirts and jeans that male characters could. Because, a lot of girls do wear shirts and jeans. They don't wear really leggings and skirts and all the stuff that kind of Pokemon X and Y kind of made female players wear. So I'm not saying that every female player would want to have this option, because some would just like to wear what they do wear in X and Y. And I'm sure not many guys out there would want to wear some of the female clothing. However, it would be nice to actually have this option. Now this concept actually leads on to the next most suggested feature, which is improved character customization. Now this feature was also mentioned in the previous video, and customization in X and Y was a big step forward, but it wasn't in-depth enough. So you guys suggested that there need to be more clothing options, since you could probably buy most of them pretty quickly, and there probably needs to be more hairstyles and the option to remove hats, because not everybody wants to wear a hat. Like, I know that's kind of like the Pokemon trainer's staple item, but it would be nice to actually able to change that option for once. And additionally, it would be nice to create the trainer's age, appearance, size, etc. so Pokemon Adventures would feel more unique, because I'd say like 60% of the Pokemon fanbase are actually much older than you might think. Probably around 60% are aged 15 and up, which isn't really surprising. It's a game we've grown up with, so I think it would be nice to actually maybe adapt the character's age for once. That might be something that could be included in Pokemon Sun and Moon, and I know a lot of you guys wanted that. Anyway, let's move on to our point 4, and for this we have gone for battle backgrounds. Now, one thing that impressed a lot of us in X and Y was the big list of music that we could choose when battling online. However, what surprised me personally, and probably a lot of you guys as well, was how we could only play on the same boring battleground over and over again. We've seen how the battleground can actually be different in the Pokemon Video Game Championship Finals, so it would be nice to have a selection of backgrounds to choose from Wi-Fi battles. Now, Pokemon Battle Revolution on the Wii had some really good battle backgrounds, and if we had something like that, that'd be really nice. You could have places like at the ocean at sunset, starry nights. It was really nice, and you could just basically choose whatever map you wanted when you would go online. And that would be really cool to have in Pokemon Sun and Moon. And if we actually wanted to save space for other stuff, we could maybe use part of the save data that had other battle backgrounds. So for example, when you battle in the city in X and Y, or just wild battles, or maybe when you're battling at team bases, so maybe you're at Team Flare's base or Team Magma and Aqua, stuff like that. They normally have different battle backgrounds depending on where you are in the game, so that would be really cool to have that as an online feature. Anyway, moving on to your guys' third point, we have gone for the removal of HMs. Now, I think it's fair to say that HMs have outlived their welcome. Either we have a HM slave in our party, I'm looking at you Bidoof, or we spread the HMs across our other Pokemon. It doesn't really make sense that a Pokemon with wings has to be taught to fly, and a water Pokemon has to be taught to swim. They should just be able to do that naturally. Some people suggested that HMs should be replaced with regular moves or items. Now, the Eon Flute was a really good example of how flying should be in the game, with the ability to roam around the region, and that was through an item, not a move. So if any flying Pokemon actually had this ability to do that, then we'd probably have to be given this item or skill after beating the final gym leader to probably balance it out. But that would mean that we wouldn't have to have so many moves that are taking up only 4 slots. We only get 4 slots, and the fact that HMs have to take up one of them for most of our Pokemon is a bit ridiculous nowadays. So it would be really cool if we could see those removed or just changed in some way for Pokemon Sun and Moon. But anyway, moving on to your guys' number 2 point, we have gone for difficulty settings. Now, this feature is actually what I chose for my number 1 spot, and I saw a lot of people agreeing with this. And the ability to change the difficulty is something that a lot of us have wanted for a while, because I feel like, especially with X and Y and Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, Pokemon games have become much easier. Now, I actually didn't know beforehand when I made my previous video, but as many pointed out to me, you can actually change the difficulty of the game in Black and White too, and I think this is personally a fantastic option. However, you actually unlock this towards the end of the game, and I think we should be able to choose the difficulty from the start. So we should be asked a question, are you a newcomer or a veteran player, something like that, and then we can, play the game and enjoy it from start to finish on a decent difficulty, rather than unlocking the other options like we had to in Black and White 2. Additionally, it would be nice if we could maybe get a Nuzlocke mode in the options somewhere that we could switch on and off when we wanted. If players wanted to play that style, then they could actually do that. So that's something that you guys suggested. I think it's a really good suggestion. But anyway, we're going to move on to number 1, and I think a lot of you guys know what it's going to be, and this is multiple save files. Now, I was bombarded with comments on why I didn't include this in my previous video, and it seems that a lot of fans still want this option. Although it probably isn't possible under Nintendo 3DS's hardware, multiple save files would be an amazing feature. It would mean we could start the game again whenever we wanted, try out different starter Pokemon, play one file as a Nuzlocke, and much more. However, multiple save files are very unlikely to be implemented in Pokemon Sun and Moon, generally because Nintendo know that people will buy multiple copies to tackle the problem of having one save file per cartridge. That's how it's always been, and I don't really see it changing. However, it would be nice to see it happen one day. So guys, that is your top 10 list of features you want to see in Pokemon Sun and Moon. Let me know in the comments section below if I did miss out any of your features. And if you enjoyed the video, definitely leave a like, it's really appreciated. And if you're new to the channel, definitely hit the subscribe button. We're growing really quickly at the moment, and it's just all thanks to awesome people like you. So thank you so much for the support, guys. I will be doing giveaways for Pokemon Sun and Moon, and maybe for some Pokemon Go wristbands in the future. As soon as they get a release date, or maybe some box art, I'll start doing giveaways on Twitter and on YouTube, so definitely keep an eye out for those. My Twitter link is always in the description, so if you ever want to follow, definitely check it out there. And anyway guys, I hope you have an awesome day. Thank you very much for watching this video, and I will see you next time. Peace!